Right now, it's The Rock from 106.1 KISS FM here with my tag team partner in podcasting,
Yokozuna.
That's right.
And Aaron Cornish. What's up? Welcome to the Enhancement Talent. And I hope you know we spare no expense on set props.
Look at this set. My goodness, we've got one glass and a stuffed Yokozuna or something.
He goes better this way.
I think so too. Oh, there he goes. He's
sorry.
hardcore.
All right, there he goes.
We've got a fun show lined up for you today, Eric.
Yeah, we are going to be talking about some of the best minds in the business. You ever hear somebody say a great mind for the business, and that's what we want to talk about today. We have our top 5. This is basically a dream 5 booking committee. Now again, all things equal, let's assume the people are going to get along. Let's assume that maybe they've passed away and but they could still be a part of this booking committee.
Definitely.
And make it work. So that's what we've got today, the best minds. You want to start with your first person?
I'm happy to do that, and I want to say a few things. Number one, I kind of made it a list of people with previous booking experience. So, for example, I think I would be good on a dream booking committee, but I didn't put myself on the list.
As would I.
And also, people like, there's a lot of great minds, but people who have booked before is kind of what I left it to.
And I did too, because there was a couple people that I wanted to put on the list, and I went, well, they don't have experience, but I think they would be good. Guys like Mick Foley, I think would be really good.
Good minds.
But he doesn't really have any experience in booking before, so yeah.
I kept it to strictly bookers, and I'm going to start at the top, I think, and work my way down. The first name on my list, I debated putting this name on there. He's got a lot of positives and a lot of negatives associated with him, but I think the number one mind in the business and the number one booker, especially when it comes to track record, is Vince McMahon. And he would be in charge of my booking committee for sure. His credentials speak for themselves. He's been in charge of the WWF, the WWE, since he bought it from his father in the 80s and expanded into cable, and he's the winner. I mean, he wins wrestling. And in my opinion, even though he has a lot of outdated ideas, a lot of misses, and you could argue that there's some people who have a better track record of success that didn't have the money that he did. McMahon has proven himself to be the best booker in the history of wrestling, in my opinion.
Okay. And I almost put Vince on my list, but I actually didn't put him on my list, and here's why. I think Vince has always been kind of surrounded by really, brilliant people, and but being the guy that is in charge with the final say-so, I think is a great position for him. And so maybe cheating a little bit on my list, I'm going to say that Vince is not one of the 5, but he might be the guy to, veto or give the go-ahead on everything. But I will say the first person on my list will be the person who, for the longest time, helped Vince McMahon create such good things, and that is Pat Patterson.
Really?
Pat Patterson, I think for the majority of the time that WWE and WWF have been on TV, has been that guy that was right there, right-hand man with Vince, coming up with a lot of finishes. He was always in charge of booking the biggest matches on the card.
That's true.
So I'm going to go with Pat Patterson.
Number 1? Are you working down too?
I don't really have a set number, but he for sure would be on my list.
Between 2, 3, and 4, I feel like they're kind of interchangeable with their spots, but I think that I've got a pretty solid rest of my list here. The second person on my booking committee is a guy that is very controversial in this business, and that is Vince Russo.
All right.
We've spoken about Vince Russo before, and you've asked me point blank, are you pro or anti Vince Russo? I'm pro Vince Russo, but Vince Russo needs someone like a Vince McMahon on top of him, or over his head rather, to kind of nix some of his bad ideas, which he didn't have in WCW. So, but the stuff that he did come up with, I associate him more than anybody else with writing the Attitude Era, which to me was a whole lot of fun. And that was the best time in wrestling, in my opinion. So while I don't want him in charge of my booking committee, I want him high up there. Vince Russo, welcome to my dream booking committee.
Well, you're not crazy, because I also have Vince Russo on my list.
Okay.
And especially when you're working with a guy like Pat on my committee, because they did work together throughout the Attitude Era. There were some times when I guess Pat took a retirement and then came back. But yeah, if he's got other people around him and he's got somebody over top of him to make sure the ideas are solid, he's a great TV writer, is what he is. And so if he can, but he knows wrestling too. So the crazy ideas can get thrown out by the other members, as far as I'm concerned. But he does have some really good ideas.
That's right.
Yep.
Back to me, or are we going with you?
Go for it.
Okay, let's talk about the guy who gave the head of my booking committee the biggest run for his money in the history of wrestling, and that's Eric Bischoff.
Okay.
Eric Bischoff, like everyone on my list has positives and negatives. The fate of all true geniuses, they say, is to be misunderstood. And some people, with as many great things as they contribute to wrestling, also have things that they did wrongly, or this guy certainly had an ego, thought a lot of himself. But Eric Bischoff wrote some damn good TV, too. He, like I said, is the only person who could beat Vince McMahon at his own game. Almost did it permanently, but did it for 83 weeks. He's the guy who came up with probably, I don't want to say the greatest angle in the history of American wrestling, but damn close with the NWO. And a lot of other great stuff, too. He eventually got out of control. And there are plenty of bad examples of things that Eric Bischoff did. But I think if you can get him in his prime in the mid-90s, he's the guy I want on my team.
All right, and I did not go with Eric Bischoff on my list either. And for a lot of reasons, I'm going to kind of stick with my same reason on Vince McMahon, because I feel like Bischoff was the guy in charge, sort of. I mean, there were a lot of guys in charge, but I think there was a lot more creative people underneath him that were kind of coming up with this stuff, be it Kevin Sullivan, be it Kevin Nash, or whoever it might have been. I don't think Bischoff had as many great ideas as he gets credit for. That's just my opinion.
Okay, sure.
So he doesn't make the list. But a guy that does, let's go to number 3 on the list. Why not? Paul Heyman.
He's on my list.
Paul Heyman was the number 3 guy that was there at the time. He is one of the most creative guys ever in the business. He thinks outside the box. He knows how to accentuate a performer's positive and hide the negative. He is the best at doing that. And look at what he had in ECW. He had a lot of guys that became huge stars, like the Sandman, who, where else would the Sandman be a huge star? He couldn't. He tried at WCW, didn't work. Tried at WWE, didn't work. Paul Heyman brought the best out of the Sandman with hiding all the horrible things about him.
Well, and don't forget what he did for people like Steve Austin and Mick Foley.
Absolutely, absolutely.
When they had a very short tenure in ECW, it changed their careers.
Yeah, so I think Paul Heyman, and here's the thing, Paul Heyman is strictly a creative guy. I mean, let's not forget what he did with SmackDown, like in the early 2000s either, because, I mean, SmackDown was beating Raw. It had some of the greatest, people on its roster. It had the Eddie Guerreros and the Edges and the Rey Mysterios and all of those guys, and it was kicking butt.
It was
Paul
better
Heyman
than Raw
was in charge of that.
During that, they called it the SmackDown 6 era.
Absolutely.
When, it was like Edge, Guerrero, Angle, Rhino, Benoit. People were just tearing it up and destroying Raw. Heyman made my list.
So the fact that Heyman does not have charge over any creative anymore is a crime in my opinion. But always let him handle the creative, never let him handle the money. Paul Heyman is the man.
You said the right thing. The right description of Paul Heyman is he knew what to show and what to hide. He knew what to do, what wrestlers' talents were and what their downfalls were. And that's a very important ability to have as a booker. I only have one name left. You have 2 left?
I have 2 left.
All right, you want to go?
Yeah, let me, I will say Jerry the King Lawler is one that I'm going to put on there.
Okay.
One that a lot of people don't think about. But there was a lot of bookers through Memphis. A lot of, and they would switch off. It would be Lawler, it would be Jerry Jarrett, and it would be Robert Fuller, it would be Dutch Mantell. All of them had great minds. But to me, Lawler was the one who was the constant, because he was always in Memphis, and he always had a little bit of say what was going on. They were so ahead of the game with everything, whether it be musical vignettes, which WWF picked up later on, whether it was, bringing in characters that were relevant into what was going on in pop culture. I mean, Lawler was on the cusp of all of that. And to me, that little bit of old school booking, I think, is good in today's day and age.
Mm-hmm.
I think for sure the industry could use some old school booking, mixed in with today's booking. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Somebody like a Lawler or a Jim Cornette or a Jim Ross or something like that in the mix. You know what I mean? But Lawler, to me, I think should be there.
You mentioned a lot of names that were on my runners-up list. I thought about Lawler. I thought about Dutch. I thought about Ed Ferrara being on my list too. The last name on my list is one that you actually did just mention. Number 5, rounding out my my Dream Bookers list, is Jim Cornette.
There you go. Jim
Cornette has an incredible mind for the business. He knows how a promo should go and how a promo will sell tickets. He knows how to get heat and how to get cheers, and he knows how to book stars, and he knows wrestling, and he's thinking very far ahead of himself too. He's got a brilliant mind for this business, so much so that I put him in my top 5 of all time. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Jim Cornette just barely missed my list. He was definitely in the running. Yeah, and of course this is fantasy because there's no way Jim Cornette and Vince Russo could exist in the same room, much less the same booking committee.
That would be a show in itself.
Yeah, it would. But I think, yeah, for sure. I mean, very close to the list. My last one, you're not going to agree with. You're going to hate.
I know what you're going to say. Can I say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're going to say Dusty Rhodes.
It's the dream, baby. It's, yeah, Dusty Rhodes. And I know you don't enjoy his booking style. He gets known so much for the finish, you know, the Dusty finish, just because it was done so many times. Well, he was so much more than that. He was the main guy, you know, through NWA and WCW for so many years until, you know, Turner took over. He was the guy. So, you know, and you can't deny some of the angles that he was booking. You know, when WWF was in the height of their popularity in the late 80s, you know, here he was still not drawing 93,000, but he was drawing sellout crowds with Flair and Dusty, and with Sting, and with Magnum TA, and with the Horsemen and all that stuff. And you know, and that was Dusty. So, you know, he's on my list. As much as you hate him, yeah, I think he's great.
So let me just clarify. You do think that Dusty was a better booker than Bischoff and Cornette?
I think Dusty had a better track record than either one of them.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. Because I truly don't believe, in my opinion, I don't believe that Bischoff is a true booker. I don't.
Really?
No, I really don't. I really don't. I think he was a figurehead. I think he surrounded himself with people who had a lot of control, and he just took their input. But I don't think he had a mind for the business like people give him credit for.
Okay.
I think again, he's a TV guy. He's a TV producer.
I understand.
He gets TV shows, but the wrestling business, I don't think Bischoff came up with as much of the stuff. As, yes, he got the NWO idea from an angle in Japan.
Sure, I understand
that rolled on, but I don't think he was really responsible for the NWO doing what the NWO did.
Okay,
that's my opinion.
I understand, and you know, the last one we disagree on, as you probably foresaw. But I thought we had definitely put together a list of, I don't know how many were on there, probably like 7 or 8 great names, you know, on there, because we doubled a few over. But there you go, our 5 greatest minds in the business, our dream booking committee. Did we miss any? Is there someone that should be on the list that we didn't mention? Let us know. Email us.
We'd love to hear. You can also tweet us at the eTalent, especially during any Raws, SmackDowns, pay-per-views. We love to interact with you. So make sure you do that and subscribe to our videos, and we'll see you next week on the Enhancement Talent.